To liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let us continue with our class on the stream of nectar that cures all disease. As we've studied from last week, there are three aspects that's talked about in this text. The first one is that illness can be meritorious. The second aspect is illness is a genuine teacher because it can eradicate us from the state of indolence. The third aspect is that by relying on illness, we can engage in the actual practice of the 6 paramitas. Yesterday, we already talked about that even when we get ill, we shouldn't think in such a way that, oh, why me? I am so unfortunate. Why did I get infected by this disease? Or why did I get ill? You shouldn't think in such a way. Rather, you should contemplate that it is only natural that I got ill. Everyone gets ill. So why not me? Recently, I watched a short video which is similar, it carries a similar logic to that of the Buddhist logic. In the short video, there are two people. One of them is riding a bicycle. The other person asked him, "How old are you? Why are you still riding a bicycle?" In this large city that is Shenzhen, most people around their 30s, they will be driving a Mercedes. Why are you still riding a bicycle? And then this person who's riding a bicycle asked him back, saying that, "How old are you? How old are you then?" And then the other person said that I'm also 30. And then the person riding the bicycle saying that many people died at the age of 30. Why are you still alive? When other people are successful, why are you not successful? When there are people are ill, why are you not ill? You can use this debate method that is by the same logic. If you were to follow the same logic. People sometimes would use this particular method to complain, to whine, or sometimes to refute the others. Anyhow, the point is that it's very easy for us to get ill. Let it be the pandemic, or AIDS, or cancer. There are all kinds of illness. Especially when you look at cancer, according to some resources, it's stated that in China, there are about 2 to 3 million people get cancer every year. Not only cancer, let's look at the suicide rates. In China alone, I remember that there are about 200,000 to 300,000 people commit suicide in China alone. Let it be illness or death. In fact, they are all very normal. They're normal phenomena that happens around us. It is only that we don't pay attention to them. And then, when such things happen to us, we feel that, oh, I can't handle it anymore and I can't deal with it. It is only that you're not prepared for it. So when we are still at when we still don't have those problems, we should be prepared for it. It's just like taking vaccination. It is taking vaccination to prepare for illness, to prepare for death. If you're not prepared for those situations, then it is easy for you to generate a mind of fear or anxiety when things actually happen. With that kind of negative mentality, it could potentially worsen your illness, because our physical health is very much correlated to our mental healthness. When you have bad temper, when you feel depressed, then all of those kinds of negative mental state could worsen your illness. Even if you just get a simple cold, if you're not prepared for it, then you could get angry. You would feel that, oh, it's because of so-and-so, that is why I got a flu, I got a cold. That kind of regression would arise in your mind. So we should be prepared and think that illness is normal and illness can be virtuous. There's a Doha song called the Song of Happiness, where it states that I will be happy when I am ill, because it could purify my past negative karma. So when we can transform illness onto the path of enlightenment, then of course it could create all kinds of virtuous results, such as purify our past negative karma and our obscurations. Master Xuanzang, in his collection of all virtuous actions that comes into one, he states that at the later time of his age, when he got ill, I believe there were two monks, I think, were having a conversation with him. And then they said that though it is such a minor illness, it can purify all kinds of, all myriads of illness.
像这个玄奘那么高僧大德的话，那也最后这个生病。但生病的话呢，
When we look at Master Xuanzang, such a great master, he got ill as well. But the way he works with it is that he sees it as an opportunity to purify the past obscurations. Therefore, for us, we should also try our best to view illness as virtuous as well. It is not that we only think it, but not practice in such a way. I understand it could be difficult if you don't take Madhyamika teaching to your heart, or the Tantrayana teachings, such as taking illness as empty and practice illness as being luminosity, as being luminous. But at least I think you can contemplate it in such a way that the karma is real. You're ill now is because of the past negative actions that led to it. Maybe you killed some other sentient beings, or maybe you harmed other sentient beings. I think I've shared my experience with you before, because I have ankylosing spondylitis, and therefore I had to go through various kinds of surgeries and treatments, and they're very painful. Sometimes I think to myself, all of a sudden, I thought to myself, maybe I was a matador because I engaged in bullfighting and then pierced a weapon into the spine of the bull. Therefore, I'm suffering from this particular illness that requires piercing a knife into my spine as well. That's how I contemplated about my illness. Sometimes we have to be able to understand that there are causal correlations to our illness. There are people who had to go through amputation, for example. Such kind of a painful illness is definitely a result of your previous negative karma. By practicing in such a way, it would be helpful to you. I have to wear my glasses because my eyesights are getting worse nowadays.
Those
were the content we covered yesterday. To generate a sense of joy when you get ill. It would be a bit difficult for ordinary beings. I understand that, but at least I think the bottom line is that you shouldn't complain and whine about your illness. We should be able to face illness with a sense of calmness. Whatever illness it may be, maybe cancer. Because nowadays, whenever people go to the hospital, they would be able to get their diagnosis very quickly. In the past, the hospitals don't usually tell the patients that they have cancer. But I think for a practitioner, it should be easy for us to accept that. I have a relative, his name is Tenzin Gyamtso. He was an old Lama. I remember that he was really kind to me and took care of me when I was still at school, especially when I was sick. So when he got ill, I took him to the hospital. The doctor then told me that he had late-stage liver cancer. At the time, I remember that he didn't understand Chinese, but somehow he understood it. And then he said that, is it that I can't live for a long time? Then if that's the case, it would be the best for me to go back to Larungar. You don't have to keep it as a secret from me. I can fully accept that. I'm fine. So I did tell him the truth, and I told him that he won't be able to live long. He accepted that as the truth very calmly, and then he passed away in Larungar. So as a practitioner, I think other than the suffering or the pain that we experience physically, there is also another aspect of the suffering, which is the suffering of the mind. So the physical suffering is a little bit difficult for us to completely eradicate, but the suffering of mind, I think it would be easy for us to get over with. If you understand karma, if you accept that, then it would be easy for you to fully accept your illness, and you don't have to suffer from the mental aspect. The physical pain would be a little bit difficult to completely eradicate, but the mental pain can be eradicated easily. If you were to see illness as beneficial, if you see illness as an opportunity, lots of the opportunities we see in life, sometimes, I think most of the time, opportunity happens or occurs when there are ups and downs in life. Good opportunities sometimes are really the bad turning point in disguise. And vice versa, sometimes illness can be a good opportunity in disguise. Majority of people, of course, they don't want to get ill. They would say, I can deal with everything in life as long as I don't get sick. But you probably have that good wish. But is that wish going to get fulfilled? Would you be able to be healthy at all times? We have so many wishes, but how many of them would come to be true? You probably know that answer by yourself. Therefore, it would be better for you to think in such a way that I'm sure I will be ill eventually. Therefore, I am going to use the Dharma I've studied, the methods I've learned to deal with my illness. A doctor, though that they deal with patients every day, however, because they never trained their mind to face illness, therefore they would suffer during the time of their own illness as well. Even a psychotherapist or a psychologist, they usually consult their patients. However, when it's their turn to have depression, to give an example, it would be difficult for them to work with it still. However, Buddhism is very different. It is to work with your mind directly. I hope all of you can share this method to the others, especially how to transform suffering, transform illness onto the path of enlightenment. This particular pithy instruction on how to transform suffering onto the path of enlightenment is very rare, and only a very small amount of people know how to do that. Whenever we go to hospital, we see that there are so many people in the hospital. But how many out of that large crowd of patients can maintain a happy mindset? But after studying this particular text, after studying the Amrita stream, then you would be able to face illness with happiness if you were to practice it. So I really encourage you to use this practice, to practice it in your daily life. I'm not trying to curse you to get ill, but it is only, this practice is only meaningful once you practice it. If you give me enough time to give teachings, I can speak a lot. I can go on and on. But so far, this is the summary of the previous class. That's what we've covered so far. The second point, then, is to view illness as the guru, so that you can abandon indolence. You need to think that there are more severe sufferings that is much more worse than my illness, which is the suffering of the three lower realms. Whatever illness you have right now, let it be stomachache, headache, whatever that may be, these kinds of suffering and pain cannot compare to any of the suffering of the three lower realms. Let it be the cold hell, the hot hell, all of those hell realms, nor the hungry ghost realms, nor of the animal realms, where they would kill each other, they would eat each other in animal realms. We don't have any of those. So the suffering that we have as human beings are really nothing compared to the three lower realms. And this severe suffering that I experience right now in my illness, along with all the grave sufferings of all sentient beings, of all the three lower realms. In fact, I had all experienced them before in my past lives. From beginningless time. According to the 400 verses of Madhyamika, it says that if ordinary beings were to know the suffering of birth and death, of all the sufferings of birth and death, then at one instant their body and mind will be completely collapsed. So they will faint and they'll be completely destroyed. It is lucky of us that we don't know our past lives. Otherwise, we will feel great fear and we will feel great suffering. There was a monk during the Buddha's time who can remember his past life, and that's why his body would have all kinds of pus and blood that ooze out of his body at all times because he remembers those suffering moments. That is why the Buddha agreed that he could wear a different colored monastic robe. We had suffered gravely in the ocean of samsara. The tears that we shed are more than the ocean, and the corpses that we've had are higher than the Mount Sumeru. That is why we need to seek for liberation, because if you do not seek for liberation, then in the limitless lifetimes, you will suffer limitlessly as well. Therefore, it is important for us to visualize and to practice during the time of illness. And I think it's really not that difficult. Sometimes you may feel that, it pains me so much, or it is really suffering, it is very uncomfortable. Majority of times, if our organs have some problem, usually it doesn't bring as much as a sense of pain or suffering than for example, on our skin and on some places that's more sensitive. So at that time, when you're suffering, it is important to think in such a way that now all of my negative deeds are maturing, and I'm simply suffering in such a way to purify all of my negative deeds, which is a much lighter punishment. So I should practice to seek for liberation, otherwise there would be no ending to the suffering. However, I had no idea of the suffering before. But now, because of this illness, I understand how painful it is, how much suffering there are in samsara. Headache, heartache, footache, whatever aches you have, whatever kinds of illness you have, all of a sudden you probably would realize, oh, wow, I had never realized that this bothers me so much. When I had some ankle problems during walking, I really envy those people who can walk perfectly. Similarly, when people have toothache, then they feel a sense of envy to people who have perfect set of teeth. So this kind of illness and the pain are so difficult to take, but there are so much worse pain and suffering in samsara, such as death. During the time of death, for example, when the earth would split and even the sky will fall apart, the suffering is as grave as that, which is completely worse than any kinds of pain that you experience at this moment. At that time, you have no other hope but to supplicate to the deity and guru if you have them. Then there's possibility of transforming that situation. Other than that, whatever kinds of worldly enjoyment, such as wealth and fame and even health at the moment of death, are useless. When you're healthy, you probably don't even want to spend a second to think about it. But at the time of grave illness, you have a moment to start to rethink about your choices. Have I made the right choices in my life? What's going to happen? At that time, many questions will naturally arise. Without practice throughout the life, then it will be very difficult for people to accept death. There are people at the moment of death, they're still their only thing is to be hopeful that they don't die. Other than that, there's nothing that they can do. So it is quite important you understand that illness can give you a good reminder so that you will engage your activities in the virtuous direction. Otherwise, fame, beauty, fame, none of those things would be able to help you at the time of death. The text continues to say that now you have encountered the precious Dharma that is still present in this world, which is exactly the method to part from suffering. Since none of the other methods in this world can help with the suffering in this world. So the only method that is available to us is present in the Dharma. Fortunately, we are living during the time where the Dharma is still present in this world. There are great masters, the wonderful teachers, spiritual mentors are still alive in this world, where they can still bestow you the wonderful teachings. Let's look at the generations and generations of, without their teaching, without their composition of commentaries, would we be able to learn these methods of working with illness? It is very difficult to say if we'll still be able to receive these profound teachings without them. Other than that condition, if we do not engage in the study of Dharma, then would we be able to work with illness? I highly doubt it. That is why this time I really call up on all of you to engage in the study of this particular text. The other day, I thought to myself during the translation of this text, I thought to myself that just in case, if the pandemic will get even more spreaded, because it's very hard to say. Just to think about it, now it's about 4 to 5 out of 70 have already contracted with COVID, so it's very hard to say if it's going to get even worse or not. Even by chance, if we're spared from COVID, there are all other kinds of illness, other than a very sudden calamity such as plane crash. I think for the rest of them, we can all work with them. We have a long period of time to work with suffering. IV drips or all kinds of treatments that we would go through during sickness. For a long period of time, when people suffer from illness, that kind of long duration could also drive away the loved ones, such as relatives and family members too. I've seen people at the time of death, they don't, that's the only time they would get the visits from family members, because that's the time the relatives and family members would fight for the inheritance. And for a patient, at the time of death, they would feel even more depressed. Of course, we can't compare our own realization to the great masters of the past, but at least we can develop some certainty, or we can make supplication, we can make aspiration, and we should understand at the time of death, knowing that this is simply a transformation, transmigration, and a change of body. So at this very important time of death, or at the time of illness, I make this aspiration, may I be reborn in a virtuous place so that I can practice the Dharma. Since now we're living at a time where the wish-fulfilling jewel, that is the Dharma, is still present in this world. Therefore, as long as I still have one breath, as long as I'm still alive, I shall try my very best to cross from the ocean of samsara. This precious lifetime, we should try our very best to be freed from samsara. The Gautama great masters used to say that, may I never have a skull again, which means that may I never take rebirth again in samsara. Now that we have this great teachings and pithy instructions like such, we should practice it. According to Samyukata Agama Sutra, it says that once we have already received the profound teaching given by the sages and by the noble ones, may I no longer take rebirth in the three existences, nor the suffering ocean of birth and death, so that I would no longer encounter all kinds of worries and sadness and suffering. If we had never encountered a spiritual teacher, then obviously, most likely, we will be wandering in samsara without any aim. However, since we have already encountered such supreme Dharma teaching, such wonderful spiritual teachers, now we are well prepared to eradicate the root of samsara. According to the Chan tradition, there is a record where it says that if we do not liberate ourselves from this lifetime, then when should we liberate ourselves? Now is the best time. Now is the most precious opportunity to liberate ourselves. Now we have already obtained this precious human birth. We have already encountered the supreme Mahayana teachings. Now we have already met all the wonderful companions on the path. This is really the most supreme and most precious opportunities that we will ever gain to attain liberation. Look at all of us who are already here in Larongar. As well as the other Sangha members. I'm sure you will hear this recording later on. So contemplate upon this. Now we've already encountered such supreme Dharma teachings. If we squander this opportunity, how shameful it would be, how pitiful it would be. So, I think we should all try our best to encourage ourselves to attain liberation and not to squander our life. When we're practicing the teachings, when we're engaging in any of the study and practice of the Dharma, I think the least that we can do is to generate the mind of renunciation and to generate the mind of bodhicitta. And then at the time of death, you won't have any regret anymore. So if you try, we do, and we still have lots of hope in our lifetime to attain liberation. There's a collection of the stories of people taking rebirth in Pure Land, the stories were collected by Master Lianqi, a great Zen master in mainland China, where he told a story that there was one person who engaged in diligent practice for a dozen of years, and eventually at the time of death, many signs of rebirth in Pure Lands were shown. Many people around him didn't recognize his level of insights until he himself truly realized the 16 signs that's stated in the Mind Contemplation Sutra, as well as the insights that's the description of the insights that's described in the Lotus Sutra and so on. We can see that there were definitely people who used to be butchers, who used to commit all kinds of negative actions in the past. But because of illness, they started to understand the importance of practice and spiritual attainment. Therefore, right away they abandoned all of their negative actions and tread onto the path of liberation because of the opportunity of illness. I think many people used to say that, oh, if I don't get ill at that time, I probably would never develop faith in Buddhism. I've heard that again and again. It is the extraordinary experiences such as illness that could really lead us onto the path of spirituality and onto the path of liberation. Many people suffered from all kinds of illness, physical or mental, or just simply some kind of emotional stagnation. But because of all those unpleasant experiences, they stepped onto the path of enlightenment. So we should definitely cherish this opportunity now that we already listen to the Dharma. We should all vow to have this lifetime as our last lifetime in the samsara. Especially now I'm giving teachings to only the seniors over here. You should all make that aspiration. I notice most of you are not taking notes as how our Sangha used to be when they're sitting in the shrine hall. Initially, I thought it would be difficult for me to give teachings, especially noticing that you're not listening to the class very attentively. However, I think you're doing well. You're listening with your heart, though not on notes. Anyhow, I sincerely wish that this would be your last birth in samsara. Even if you cannot attain this particular goal and die because of certain illness, then even at that time, as long as you still have time to practice, we should take the time to make the aspiration. I've witnessed many people's death, and I know how much suffering there could be. For example, people can't even drink even one drop of water at the time of death or right before death. But many people, they're very clear. Though that they can't make any sound, they can't move, but they would wink their eyes to signal that they can still hear and they're still very clear in their mind. So at that time, when you still have that opportunity, when you can still think clearly, you should make such kind of aspiration that I am offering my body, my provision, my virtuous roots to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then make the aspiration, in my future lifetime, may I attain the great liberation, the great Bodhi. You should make a great, you should definitely make a grand aspiration. Even if you can't attain liberation at the time of death, even if you can't attain liberation in this lifetime, then at least you should make this grand aspiration of attaining supreme liberation, of attaining the great Bodhi. Because aspiration is so important, it is very powerful, and it is not going, the power of aspiration is not going in vain, does not go in vain, it is not futile. So you should definitely make that grand wish, grand aspiration. According to the pure Buddha field of Manjushri, the adornment of Marriage Sutra, it says that all phenomena partakes cause and effect, and the aspiration is the root of it. So if you make this aspiration, then the fruition would definitely fit into its cause. Since all phenomena arises from cause and condition, so everything arises from the mind, from the aspiration. Therefore, the aspiration that we make in our mind will eventually come to fruition. If people made the aspiration such as, I want to be a butcher, I want to be a fisherman, I want to be an ashura, I want to be a wrathful person who can take revenge upon my enemy. So people who made those vicious aspirations, they would reap the vicious fruition, and the kind of people who make virtuous aspirations, they will reap the virtuous fruition. Therefore, by having the opportunity of illness, we should learn to make the aspiration. It is a good reminder for us to make virtuous aspirations so that we can reap the virtuous fruition. Making virtuous aspiration. Make virtuous aspiration. I've repeated that many times because I don't know if later on I'll ever have the opportunity to remind you again. So when you're still free, when you still have the opportunity to make the aspiration, you should make the virtuous aspiration that you vow to take the last rebirth in samsara. This is the last rebirth in samsara, and you vow to attain liberation. By the great aspiration of mind and by the great blessings and power of the Dharma, then the fruition would definitely be virtuous and you would definitely be able to be liberated. Whenever I ask people to make aspiration, I think the healthy ones probably would neglect my calling. They feel that I'm fine, I'm healthy, I have food to eat, I'm comfortable. Why do I need to make aspiration? When you don't have anything to ask for, when you feel comfortable in samsara, then you don't need to do that, right? But when you're ill, when you feel that you're very alone and you don't have any place to take refuge, and you have no way out, then that's the time you will genuinely make the aspiration. You will really mean it. Then that kind of aspiration that's made by you with great certainty will definitely come to fruition. So you should contemplate upon it again and again. All the sentient beings, though they are abiding in the nature of suffering at all times, but they don't know that. They're not aware of it at all. This part is about making aspiration of bodhicitta. They are suffering, but they don't know it. Just as according to Bodhisattva Charyavatara, all sentient beings, though are suffering at all times, alas, they had no idea of it because of ignorance. So without knowing it, out of ignorance, they're suffering in the endless samsara. All the sentient beings, because their mind is being obscured by the darkness of ignorance, therefore involuntarily they had to take rebirth again and again in samsara. Therefore, in order to dispel all the sufferings of all the sentient beings, to make sure that they will have the causes and conditions to attain happiness and the ultimate joy, I shall make this aspiration, though that my physical body is not as good as maybe some other sentient beings. However, my mind can be really strong and I can make the aspiration to liberate them. whenever you go to hospital and see all the people there who are ill and who are suffering, then you should make the aspiration that may I have the power and the ability to liberate sentient beings so that they can attain the relative and ultimate happiness. May my illness be of the cause of benefit to all sentient beings, because I made the aspiration of bodhicitta. I think this is very practical for many people. Whenever you are suffering from any kind of suffering, any kind of pain, make simply an aspiration. By having this pain, by suffering from illness, may my illness be of benefit to other sentient beings. May all sentient beings' illness and suffering be taken by myself. Whenever, for example, you're supposed to take a shot, and then when the needles pierce through your skin and you feel ouch, that's the time to make the aspiration. So again and again, in order to be able to do that, again and again, one should supplicate to the three jewels and to the Guru. May my suffering, may my illness pacify all the sufferings of all the sentient beings. If a person were to get sick for 100 days, if you can make such aspiration every day for this 100 days, then would it be better for you to get ill for this 100 days, or would it be better for you not to? Then definitely, since you've made the aspiration of bodhicitta for 100 days, your illness is so much more valuable than when you were healthy. Many people, in fact, took refuge in the three jewels and started believing in karma. It is only because of their illness. So your illness is very meaningful in that way. Anyhow, whatever kinds of pain and suffering that you experience at this moment, that I experience at the moment, I shall put on the armor of benefiting self and others. I think the gravest pain that human beings can experience in this world is illness. So at that time, instead of dwelling in that suffering, we need to put on the great armor of benefiting self and others. It is normal and natural and very often that we will have all kinds of obstacles in our lives. Sometimes the obstacles would come all together, would flood you all at once. Sometimes it's the pain and suffering in one's mind and heart, and sometimes it's physical pain and suffering. And it happens to everyone in this world. It is, someone said that the pandemic had completely changed the lifestyle that we had. At that moment, when there are such grave sufferings of sentient beings, that is exactly the time that you should put on the great armor of benefiting self and other. So from now onwards, I vow not to be indolent. It is only because I was indolent in my past life that is why I am ill. It is because I accumulated negative karma and affliction. That is why I took rebirth in samsara, and that is exactly why I'm suffering because of illness. We now reap the bitter fruition of suffering exactly is because of our past indolence and our afflictions, also all the negative karmas we created. According to the collected sutra of all the essential points, where it says that the foolish beings indulge themselves in the cause of suffering, therefore they cannot eradicate the suffering. All the negative causes would naturally reap negative fruition.
因为这样的这个苦瘾的原因呢，就是就像产生种子一样的，就是各种各样的痛苦。
Just like if you were to plant a seed, you would naturally reap the fruit of that particular seed. In the past few years, I'm sure the fruition that we reap and all the various kinds of negative activities that we engage in, we see much more sufferings that's coming to full fruition, such as war, such as famine, and lack of food security, and all kinds of sufferings that cannot be expressed in full. Don't think that while I'm living here in this pure land, it is only the Saha world, people are suffering over there. I don't think that's very helpful because everyone should be prepared. What if there's a famine? What if there's a war? What if there's a pandemic? What if you get ill? What if everyone in this world, all sentient beings, negative karma coming to fruition of negative fruition, then what would you do? We have to be prepared for it. And then it says that if I would have attained the liberation, how would I be suffering from illness right now? Not only that, if I had wisely practiced or carried out my activities according to karma, I wouldn't be suffering from illness at this moment. This part directly points out it's really important to conduct your actions in accordance with the karma. It is only because I was indolent in the past, that is why I'm suffering right now. Therefore, from now onwards, I would not again to commit any of those negative activities I did before. I would never go back to my past habitual patterns again. I think abandon indolence is really important. You should read back into the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. Also, there's another text. What's the title? The Collective Sutra of the Essential Points. There's also a chapter on how to avoid indolence. It is because we used to be so indolent, and that is why we committed so much negative activities. That is why we don't look very beautiful or magnificent in this lifetime. That is why we're suffering from physical illness. That is why we're suffering from moodiness and depression and so on and so forth. In the past, I believe I told you a story of the teacher of Master Xuanzang. He was a great master in Nalanda University back then, and then he, at an older age, he got headache because of his past negative deeds. And the headache was so severe that he wanted to even commit suicide. There was this one night he dreamt of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, and along with another Bodhisattva, they told him that the reason that you are suffering from such a grave headache is because you used to be a king in your past life, and then because of your order of killing others and waging war, many people died, and that is why you are suffering from such a terrible headache. But there's a disciple coming to visit you, and you shall teach him the Dharma, and in such a way, your headache will go away. That is why when Master Xuanzang finally arrived at Nalanda University, his teacher was extremely happy, and he thought, this is wonderful. We can see that a great master like him, a great Pandita like him, when he was a king in his past lifetime, he waged war, and because of his action, he killed many people. In Tibet, we say that before a person take rebirth in hell realm, he will definitely be reborn as a king, because as a king, they could conduct many negative activities such as waging war and kill many people. And then after that, they will start to take rebirth in lower realms. Especially, I think, people taking rebirth as people with authority, people with great power, and like kings and emperors. The karma is true and it's unfathomable. Therefore, for those of us who believe in karma, we have to conduct our activities in line with the teachings of karmic cause and fruition. To continue, it says that though that I have to abandon this body that is really the host of all kinds of illness, and a body that's been destroyed by aging day by day, which is unreliable. But as long as I have one breath, then by using this skin and this bag of body, I shall accumulate grand provisions and grand virtues, so that my wishes will be fulfilled at the time of death. There are two analogies that's used. One is that the body is like a bag. The body is like a bag that's filled with cells, with blood, and so on and so forth, as it is stated in the 400 verses of Madhyamika. And then also, the body is like a city, the host of all kinds of illness. So the body that is like a host of cities of illness and a bag is being destroyed by aging day by day. So it is not reliable at all. Maybe right now it appears to be reliable, maybe it appears to be healthy, but after a day or two, all of a sudden you get ill, and then you'll be sent to hospital, and then after another 1 or 2 days, this body may be dead. And then after a few more days, not even the name of this person will be still survived. So this bag of body is not reliable. However, we should rely on this bag to accumulate great merits, to accumulate great provisions for our future lifetimes. Then at the time of death, your wishes will be fulfilled just like the autumn moon or the full moon. Over here, I thought to myself, on one hand, yes, we do have this bag of body. However, we have received such profound dharmas, such profound teachings, such as last year we received so many wonderful empowerments and teachings, including liberation upon hearing and the great perfection and so on. Now, by relying on this body, we have already received such wonderful teachings, including Maha-ati. Then, if we make the aspiration, if we do not break the Samaya vows, at the time of death, even by the power of such supreme Dharma, we will definitely attain liberation. Therefore, on one hand, we should understand that this body is the city of hordes of illness. It is natural that you get all kinds of illness, to have headache and footache or whatever aches you have. Those are simply normal. At that time, instead of being bothered by all kinds of illness, you should think that, the illness is doing whatever this is doing, but I'm doing whatever I have to do. I learned to do that by myself. When I'm not feeling well, I don't really tell the others. I just do whatever I have to do. I have to translate, I have to teach, then I do whatever I have to do. I think at most I will write down my health condition in my journal. But then I also get tired of writing, I'm not feeling feeling well every day on my journal. So knowing that, then why don't we start to practice diligently to benefit sentient beings so that it will become the cause of fulfilling the grand aspirations that we have, so that it will become the cause for such a perfect fruition, and we should avoid the mind of indolence. Master Yingguang, he didn't have very good eyesight, and so he avoided to deal with lots of chores, and he spent his time on chanting mantras and chanting sutras and practice the Dharma. That's how he attained liberation. I interviewed many cancer patients in the past. Whenever I meet them, I ask them how they are, and I told them what they should do. They should really try their best to use the time of their life to practice mantra, practice Dharma, or if they are still capable, then practice the Nongzhou. My advice to you is that not to waste your time. Rather, you should practice diligently with great persistence and abandon all kinds of indolence. You should cherish your time to practice and study over here. Unfortunately, this year I heard many Sangha members told me that when we had the winter holiday, they wasted their time. They wasted lots of their time, including some Khenpos and Khenmos. They watched lots of TV. They engaged in many irrelevant chores and so on. Though that we had a very special year, very unusual year, where we didn't even have our exams last year. Many of you didn't focus on studying on the Dharma. Many of you had lots of fear, but I really don't think that's necessary. Fear and anxiety doesn't help. You just do whatever you have to do. It is okay. I had similar experiences before, so don't worry too much about it. Of course, I understand it, because the past masters, sometimes the great masters, they also had to go through various kinds of war or conflicts, regional conflicts, and sometimes extraordinary period of time in history. Sometimes I think to myself, though that it seems that we live in a very peaceful time or peaceful situation, but we can be considered as living in an extraordinary situation as well, an extraordinary time as well. Master Fazun, who went to Tibet to study, they lived during the time, or they studied during the time where they had to hide from the others during the day. But that's okay. They persisted all the way through. Maybe after 10 or 20 years, when you look back at this period of time of your life, you would realize how extraordinary your experience is. So don't be indolent. Now, whatever had passed, then let it go. We don't talk about it anymore. But from now onwards, I really hope that every one of you will persistently and attentively study the Dharma. Majority of you, I think you're doing well, especially those of you who had to go to classes in the morning. You do get up early and go attend class, and looks very diligent like a practitioner. But some of you, I noticed that you don't get up on time, and some of you would sleep in the morning. On the similar note, I would remind some of you, do not go to other practitioners' home and start to chat away and waste other people's time. That was a teaching given by Phuntsok Rinpoche as well. Do not disturb the other's mind. Do not waste other people's time. It would be the best that you can avoid indolent chatters. I think the chatters are full of negative speech. since we're here, since we don't know how long we'll still be here, I'm not saying that there's something negative is going to happen, but I'm just saying that it's impermanent, and everyone has only a limited time to stay here. Let it be 5 years, 10 years, or a month. At least use that period of time to engage in study. Do not engage your time, your precious time here in indolent chatters. Wow, there's still so many that we have to cover, so much we have to cover. Okay, maybe we should stop here. So we're talking about to do not be indolent, rather you should be diligent. Diligence is a chapter in entering the way of the Bodhisattva, as well as the collective sutra of the essential points.
Chubin tunen doa